It's time to turn to the WUKY sports page with your host, Keith Elkins, revealing conversations and stories you thought you knew from prominent Kentucky sports figures. Now, here once again is Keith Elkins.
Dorian Hairston is with us today. He played baseball at Kentucky from 2013 through 2016, had a .318 average in SEC games in his junior year, started 31 games in his senior year, and also earned a lot of honors off the field as a member of the SEC Community Service Team, twice on the SEC Academic Honor Roll, and on the SEC Freshman Academic Honor Roll. He is an accomplished poet, and his book of poetry about the life of baseball great Josh Gibson was released earlier this year. Josh Gibson was one of the greatest stars of baseball and played in the Negro Leagues back before baseball was integrated. And Dorian, it's great to have you with us. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for that lovely introduction.
Well, you were already interested in and writing poetry before college, right? And before you had your baseball experience in college. Is that right? When did that really begin to take hold?
Absolutely. So I've always been a storyteller. And then in high school, I actually wanted a dog. So I told my mom, hey, I need to take debate. So that I could convince her and my dad that they need to purchase me a dog. And she said, okay, well, I'll let you take debate if you agree to take creative writing. Mm-hmm. And she ended up winning that one. I did not get a dog. My dad got a dog a few years after he retired. And I'm now a poet. Still no dog.
Still no dog. Well, you were encouraged by your parents, as I understand it, to try everything, right? I mean, they wanted you to get into some things, and of course, some things will work out well, some won't. But you, I guess, would learn from every experience. But they really encouraged that, didn't they?
Oh, they absolutely yes. For me and my brother, I remember that they loved telling this story. We even tried soccer. I was pretty good. It's just that I hate running long distances, so that's a terrible sport for me to play. And I remember, they tell the story that about halfway through the season, I had a really good game. About halfway through the game, I just sat crisscross applesauce in the middle of the field and said, I'm done. And they said, well, you got to finish. You have to finish this season. You can stop playing after this season, but you absolutely must finish this season. And that's always been kind of the way that if you start something, you finish it. And then you can reevaluate later. Right,
but that sense of commitment, I guess, was established
absolutely.
there, right?
Yeah.
So you began writing poetry. That's what inspired you to begin and to think, hey, this is the way I can really express myself.
For me, it was the way that people responded to the poetry, and what I mean by that is, I got the sense that people enjoyed what it was that I had to say and the way that I had to say it. So very much like baseball, I really enjoy a crowd. I like to come through in that big moment in front of a whole lot of people. Mm-hmm. Poetry allows for me to continue to do that without continuing to play baseball, because that's not my choice anymore.
Mm-hmm. Sure. You wanted to write about the integration of baseball, and naturally, with anyone, the first name that comes to mind is Jackie Robinson. So you explored that a little bit, but then a teacher guided you in the direction of, at least in another direction.
Right. Phyllis Schlick of Tates Creek High School, who is now retired. So I started writing this collection as a series of persona poems about Jackie Robinson, Happy Chandler, and Branch Rickey. And after I think I wrote about 10, 15 poems, I turned them into her, and she was like, I think we need to go a different direction. These are not your best work. So she sent me down to Tates Creek High School Library, and I said, okay, I need any and everything you've got about the Negro Leagues. And I got this book, The Power in the Darkness, and it covered Josh Gibson's life, and by the 15th page, I was hooked, and I was like, "This is the guy I need to write about."
Mm-hmm. And Branch Rickey, Happy Chandler, and Jackie Robinson, all central figures there in the integration of baseball in 1947. But Josh Gibson, a little bit before that, his career was entirely in the Negro Leagues, and was well known as a star in the Negro Leagues. But he also led an interesting and somewhat tragic life.
Right. His so he gets married at 17 years old. By 19 years old, or he meets his wife when he's 17 years old. By 19 years old, he is a widower, the father of 2 children, a boy and a girl. Helen, his wife, passes away giving birth to those twins. And he spends the rest of his life, he does not get remarried. And he battles, he ends up dying tragically of a brain tumor in January of 1947, 3 months before Jackie Robinson breaks the color barrier. And, just thinking about being the best and not being recognized as the best. I don't know that, he always knew that he was the best, and everybody around him knew that he was the best, but it wasn't until 2024 that Major League Baseball acknowledged him as the best.
That's right. You're referring to the statistics being updated.
Correct.
Now, and now Josh Gibson's name is at the top of the list of lifetime batting average at 372, right?
Yes.
And
3 points shy of 375 is the way I like to say it.
Right. And about 5 points or so ahead of Ty Cobb, who had been at the top of that list before those statistics were integrated into baseball's record book, and that did just happen just a few weeks ago.
Correct.
Yeah.
I got so many text messages and phone calls about that, and I think I was aware that they were doing it or they were working on it, but it had slipped my mind. And then I just got a phone call. I think they did it on a Wednesday, and that Wednesday night, I was getting I think I got about 15 text messages or phone calls that day about, Josh Gibson's in the record books now.
Mm-hmm.
People were texting me lines, break into record books, turn more than just the ink black, which is from the first poem in the book. Right,
and this move is very meaningful, isn't it? To have these players' names listed where they need to be.
You can't go back and change the past, but you can correct for the future. And I think that this is one of the many steps that Major League Baseball and this society can take to acknowledge the existence of the wide spectrum of humans that exist inside of this country and outside of the country while we're at it.
And Josh Gibson was elected to the Hall of Fame sometime in the 70s, I believe, right? And,
72, 73.
Yeah, and so there was some recognition at that time, but then it's taken another half century to get to the point where people are recognizing the numbers that he put up. Tell me about, in addition to reading the book that you mentioned, how did you go about researching Josh Gibson's life? How did you learn more about him?
So a lot of it was actually spent at the start of it researching the owners of the teams, because I was really interested in, how does integration work? How does it function? Because what I found in my research was that a lot of the owners of the Negro League teams wanted the entire team to be integrated into Major League Baseball, not just the players. Because what ends up happening is these Negro League Baseball teams are providing jobs for black communities inside black metropoles where otherwise gainful legal employment might not be as readily available as it should be. So I started researching the Gus Greenleys and the Cumberland Posies of Pittsburgh. Gus Greenley owned the Pittsburgh Crawfords. Cumberland Posey owned the Homestead Grays, which is where Josh got his start under Greenley, and then he spends most of his career playing for Posey. And so I researched those guys. And then after that, it was just a bunch of listening to interviews. I spent a lot of time with the oral histories at the University of Kentucky with the Louis B. Nunn Center. I also read some letters from Happy Chandler's time as commissioner to see what he was saying about integration. And that was, that's the short version of this book took 10 years of the 10 years of research I was doing off and on.
You write about him through poetry, and you also write from the point of view of other people in his life. In fact, there are even a couple of times where you give voice to his bat. If
Correct.
his bat could say something about Josh Gibson, what would it say? But Josh Gibson's life provides a lot of opportunities for you to address different subjects, because you talk about the the relationship that he had with his wife, and then she dies giving birth to his children, and then he ends up living a very short life. And as you mentioned before, his death comes just a few months before Jackie Robinson integrates baseball. And so you really had a chance to express yourself on a number of different things, didn't you?
Oh, yes, and that's what I think persona poetry in particular lends itself well for and to, is this opportunity to step in and out of different points of view, develop different characters, and tell the same story from, well, again, different points of view. For some of these poems, it was really like I wrote the poem from every character's point of view, because I wasn't sure which character made the most sense to tell this story. I'm thinking very specifically of a poem in which Josh Gibson Jr. is trying to tell the reader about how he and his sister entered the world. It seemed that he was based on the character development that that was one of the last poems I wrote in the book. I would not have been able to write that poem in the very beginning because I didn't know what Josh Gibson Jr. sounded like inside of the book just yet. But it allows, this persona poetry allows for me to, as the author, kind of tell my reader different aspects of Josh Gibson's life, because he was not just a baseball player. He's a father, he's a son, he's a husband, he's a widower, he's a really good baseball player, he's a competitor. And there are some people around him that are also just as competitive, like a Satchel Paige, who had to be included.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sure. Yeah, you have a few thoughts from Satchel Paige,
Yep.
too, one of the great philosophers ever, and a great personality himself, and a part of Josh Gibson's life as they competed their parallel careers. Tell me about as you went along in creating the books or the book and the poetry. You, I guess, get an idea, an inspiration. Okay, I need to explore this, and then the poem, and then that's added to the collection. But this is such a different kind of writing than just reading someone's biography.
Right. It's so I wrote a lot of these poems, or at least I started a lot of these poems as a baseball player, or while I was coaching. I've taken a break until my kids get a little bit older, and then I'll make a decision as to whether or not I want to get back into the throes of it. But for me, the inspiration came largely from thinking about, when I discovered Josh Gibson in Tates Creek High School's library, I was 18 years old. And a lot of this book is me trying to figure out how would I have handled this? Because I am 30 now. Josh spends most of this text my age and younger. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think a lot of the inspiration comes from, is me just trying to make sense of this man's life, and how a country could be so cruel to somebody that is so deserving of love and support, and denied it.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so you would add then to your collection, and you said it took, I guess, 10 years now to...
So I started at 18. It was, I think I sent the first official draft completed at 28. And then I was 29 when we finally submitted it. Like we said, okay, it's done. We're sending it off to print. And this February, I had turned 30 2 weeks before it was released. So,
tell me about the satisfaction you feel when we're sitting here right here. We each have a copy in front of us. How good does that feel?
When I got in the mail, I got four of my little paperback copies. And you couldn't tell me anything that whole day. I was walking around the house sniffing the pages, holding them. I actually put one under the covers with me that night. It's been a long time coming, and I told myself I actually, when I was in college and I was filling out questionnaires for Major League Baseball teams, one of the answers to one of the questions was, where do you see yourself in 10 years? And I said, a published author. And that was the first time someone had ever filled out, said that in 10 years I plan on being a published poet. And I was right. I got it done.
You made it. You made it. You've also said you have not only no problem at all, but great confidence in reading your poetry in public. You've taken part in as many readings as you possibly can. Where do you think that came from? Because I would imagine there are a lot of people who are very creative, excellent writers, but then standing up and offering it to someone else in a public setting, that's a whole different thing.
Yeah, I won't name any names, but there are some poets that struggle to read their poetry in public. I don't know any of them, by the way.
Okay.
All the ones I know are phenomenal readers in public, for all of you that are listening. But I'm a member of the Afro-Latin Poets, and one of the things that we as a collective kind of pride ourselves on is our ability to read our work in public. And we challenge ourselves to read something new every time whenever we go out in public and do a reading as a group. We don't do it, I should say as a family instead of as a group. As a family, we don't get to do it as much because we're all spread out. But I think that's largely where that comes from. That and on my mom and my dad's side of the family, we've got some great storytellers. So it was modeled for me how to keep an audience engaged, how to keep them wanting more. And that's that I think that when you combine those two, I think I'm a decent reader of my poetry in public.
Mm-hmm. But you certainly have always had then the confidence to stand up and say, here's what
I've never been one to shy away from an opportunity to stand in front of a microphone.
Okay. Well, we're able to sit in front of a couple of microphones right now and talk about it, and we certainly want to get to some of the material in the book. Again, the book we didn't mention the title. The book is called Pretend the Ball is Named Jim Crow, the story of Josh Gibson, poems by Dorian Hairston. And one of the many areas that you touch in there is tell me if I'm correct here, but the place in culture of the black barbershop and Josh Gibson getting nicknamed the Reverse Samson, which was a really interesting thought. Tell me about that one, and then if you would just read that one for us.
So that came from so when I was doing my research, there was a book titled I believe it's called Cutting Up. And it's a book about the role that black barbershops play in the black community. And growing up, I would really enjoy, because when you go to the barbershop, you're spending hours in there sometimes. But it was never like a miserable experience. There was always somebody in there that was cutting up, literally.
Yeah.
And then there was always somebody in there that was also telling jokes and cutting up in that way. It was always a safe space, and you felt loved and supported, but no one ever actually said "I love you," which was but we all understood it. We all understood that we all loved each other in that space. I was like, what would that be like for Josh? And then I end up, there's a lot of biblical allusions in this text. It's like, okay, who has a lot of hair in the body? Oh, it's a reverse. Let's go with the Reverse Samson and let's see what happens. And I actually started, the poem was titled Reverse Samson, and I switched it up to pregame cut and threw that reference in there at the end. But I would be happy to read it, and I just opened straight to it.
Okay, well, good.
So this is pregame cut, persona, Josh Gibson. I wish my hair grew the speed of my bat through the zone and make it so I need to take a trip to my barber every morning. It's like when them clippers first click, buzz their way through to a new man, we can laugh away the big boss, the policeman that said we too dark to be anywhere, our woman at home waiting inside the front door, hip cocked to one side, toed the shape of an arm holding up a child, and our other woman cross town who makes us forget. All at the same time. Seems some energy, almost magic, hides itself in the alcohol burn, the near fights, the real ones, the awkward way us men pretend we don't love each other, and finds its way down deep inside where the baseball player lives and demands me to walk the whole 3 blocks down the street to the field. On game days, The old man playing checkers in the corner that no one ever sits in, pretending the ashtray across the board is his opponent, likes to gloat that he is undefeated. But then he'll jive how a home run always comes the same day I end up underneath my barber's spell, and I perk up, 'cause he might just be right. He likes to call me the reverse Samson, and I wish my hair grew fast, that my strength came from a fresh cut, and life was the inside of a black barbershop.
As I read through those, again, you're expressing and talking about the life of Josh Gibson in a medium different than most of us are used to reading about baseball players or any other prominent figures. And so sometimes I would have to go back and read and reread and see if I could get the image. But that one was one that stood out, and the reverse Samson, and certainly the effort to read it. It takes a little effort sometimes, but that's what you want. That's what you want people to read and think, don't you?
That's absolutely the experience I want for my reader. It's only 101 pages long, and what I want folks to do when they read it, you could sit down and finish this thing in 2-3 hours. But I want your experience to be one where it's a baseball game. You're not supposed to just be here for 2 hours. I want you to sit for a little bit. And I want that to be your experience.
There was one, and I don't think we talked about this before we started, but one that left an impression too was your use of the nickname Dodgers. The original Dodgers is the name of the poem, I think, in this one. It's 23. And that one gets into some heavier issues. You're exploring just the life of African Americans in it, and playing off the fact that Jackie Robinson joined the Dodgers as the player who integrated baseball. But tell me about that one.
So this poem comes from some of my research. So while I was doing my research, and this one comes with a trigger warning. I stumbled across this image of a black man at a fair sitting on a stool, and there was a hole, and above the game is what they called it. It's not a game, but above this sign read, "Hit a nigger, win a cigar," and I just sat with that for a little bit, and I want to say I found that in special collections. But it was so long ago I can't remember, so don't quote me on that. But I remember when I saw that image, I was like, okay, I've got to write a poem about this. And then I remembered Jackie Robinson was a Dodger, so then I just started trying to throw those two images together, and it wasn't really working until I found that this game, air quotes around the word game, was actually turned into a board game as well. The Jolly Darky Target game, which it makes that title makes its way into the poem. But Hooks Tinker, who is the man that's oftentimes credited with discovering Josh Gibson, has a lot of poems in here, and in his poems, he's oftentimes reflecting on what the meaning of integration is. Was it a great thing? Did we do it correctly? Did we cheat? Did we treat Josh correctly? Should we let baseball players grow up some before we start throwing them into the limelight? Questions like that. And this poem is what came out of that. So I will let the poem do the rest of the talking. The original Dodgers, Hooks Tinker. The traveling circus advertises, hit a nigger and win a cigar. To them, it's innocent hopscotch, it's skipping rope, it's a good coon hunt. Milton Bradley calls it the Jolly Darky Target game, a wide hole with no teeth outlined by crimson swollen lips means the player must pretend a black man's head pokes through the open hole, becomes a tar-covered tongue, a bullseye. His body festers on a stool as balls try to split open a forehead. Jackie Robinson was never the first black Dodger. We done dodged balls for centuries. Rent, lynch mobs, overseers, slave catchers, waded through fixed elections and rivers, done outrun horses and bloodhounds, even dodged some bullets a few times. But here soon, we might just turn ourselves into Josh Gibson, and America will find us in a 2-0 count, standing with a straight spine inside the batter's box, towering over the plate, waiting for their next pitch, waiting for their next mistake. And we guarantee it won't come back.
And the original Dodgers. And what's it like, the experience to write something like that, get that one out, and complete that?
That poem was one of the most challenging to write, simply because of the content. Like some of these are really heavy. And tough to write. I have to be in a room by myself. The lights are off. I'm usually not happy. I'm never happy when I'm writing these. But it is a huge relief when, because these poems I know I have to write. I don't have a choice in the matter. They have to come out. So once I get them out of me and onto the page, it is a relief. It is a burden now that me and my reader can share together. It's not just mine anymore.
Mm-hmm. We mentioned earlier you give voice to Josh Gibson's bat, the 40-ounce tree, I think.
Yes.
is the reference to that. And Josh Gibson, even the first time I read anything about him, one of the first things mentioned is it was a huge bat. He was a big man, but it was a big bat.
A tree stump.
Yeah.
That is what yes.
Yeah. And there were, I guess, there are 2 or 3 different poems in there, aren't there? With the
bats, absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the ones, so I put one right next to Trash Talk, because I wanted, when I was thinking about the order of the book, right after Josh gets to do one of the things that he's really good at outside of baseball, but while playing baseball, is playing the dozens. Mm-hmm. He could trash talk with the best of them. I was like, okay, who is it besides Satchel Paige, of course, that I can have in this text that can bring him down back to earth, and that is the bat. So this is the bat considering a strike, because Josh liked to brag that he never slumped. Them fellas talk real different when it's just them in the locker room. Josh and his teammates play like they're so-called sweethearts, more like cheap liquor or something you break down and sprinkle into the end of a pipe than a heartbeat or a woman or both. But if you really listen, all that talk about the only way and place they like they women, really just some weird game they play to measure themselves without actually having to do so. They lucky I never choose to speak in here, 'cause I'd tell them all about how I was there when they was being crafted and shaped and nourished by and inside that black womb, and how I whispered my baby's names into the ears of everyone in that room. How them same breasts they can't shut they mouths 'bout done put all them muscles on that frame they pretend is godlike, and how they waste that bronze skin on bad magic when they speak spells like they do. They better be glad I ain't so foolish to spend my time bragging about 4 or 5 minutes, if I'm generous. That I spend all my energy jumping in and out of what they call the future. Everywhere I've been, they can't see past whatever they got in their hands, and while they waste their power shucking and jiving they way through all their pain and suffering, they lack the vision to think for one moment how lucky they is that in the bottom of the 9th, I never even contemplate going on strike.
That from the voice of Josh Gibson's bat on that one. And you mentioned the trash talk, and that was certainly a big part of the whole Negro League experience. Those guys really got after each other, and and some of it got well. Let's see, it went a lot farther than just talking about baseball a bit. I think, didn't it?
Oh, Josh, there's one story in particular. I'm blanking on the name of the gentleman. But this poor fella went 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts and took himself out of the game because of how badly Josh was talking to him during the game. And a part of me believes that because some of it may have very well been true, from being a player myself, trash talking can get pretty ugly, but at least you know that it's not true, so you can brush it off. It's when the stuff is honest that it hurts. So Josh, this is actually Josh's longest poem, writes a poem called Trash Talk. Persona, Josh Gibson. When I first started to catch, I'd sit like I was in a rocking chair and call a clean game. I'd ask batters about how their day was, make pleasant conversation, only let out the occasional chuckle after a called strike three if I didn't like the way their voice sounded or if they was bold enough to outright ignore me altogether. After a couple seasons with the big fellas, I grew up enough to look them in the eyes, felt tall enough to show them how much bigger I am. I graduated myself from soft chatter, got my diploma in more pleasurable forms of shucking, like the way I whisper the wrong pitch to throw them off balance, tell the batter bender or deuce, then drop a sign for the pitcher to play a little chin music to make them dance. Then let them know their lady friend told me how her man had 2 left feet and I can't come to their defense no more. By the time I was a seasoned vet, I learned the only thing hitters hate more than a little white lie is when I tell them the black truth. I reach into the fresh memory of last night, pull out a perfect description of the upstairs bedroom, describe the color of the paint on a woman's big toe and they first at bat, how the lampshade don't dim the lights enough for the family picture on the nightstand to get anything other than a front row seat of a lot of bare, glistening skin. Then, by their second visit to the plate, I break down each see-through thread of that nightgown they wife liked to wear, the one he got for their anniversary, and the way it matches the old torn-up drapes hanging over the bathroom window, and how the bathtub barely big enough for the both of us. But if he good, I'll let him watch. By round 3, I map out all the ideas I have for new ways to arrange some furniture, but make sure to slide in a note about how, if he keep playing like this, he'll have to ask me for the money for it, and mention how I know a way to get rid of the bed squeak that almost too loud drown her out, and right before I apologize for the hole in the wall, I play like I'm sorry that he didn't know that neither the bed or she can make noise. By they 4th at bat, if they ain't take themselves out the game yet, I start naming bedroom secrets, how her birthmark on her inner thigh looked like one of the states I learned about back in school, and ask him if he can help me remember in a long, drawn-out strokes of detail. I tell him the way a kiss on the back of her shoulder blade opens up all types of new languages, then apologize again for any bruises I left and make sure he knows she begged for them. And all this time, no one ever been dumb enough to even think about turning their head to curl their lips to say anything to me. They just swing through strike 3, drop their dignity at the plate, and I remind them to hold tight to their little bat as they mosey on back to the dugout.
Now that's some professional trash talking
That
right
is,
there.
yeah.
But the players really did give it to each other about all kinds of things, personal lives. Nothing was off limits, was it?
On and off the field.
Yeah.
On the bus, in the club, all the way to church. No one was safe.
The life in the Negro Leagues, we read about the great players and think about what they do on the field, but just traveling, getting to ball games and playing nearly all year round, as many of them did. As I understand it, the actual regulation, like Negro National League season, would be shorter than the American League or National League season. But then these guys would go on barnstorming tours, and they'd play in the winter in Dominican or Puerto Rico, where they were accepted and had other opportunities. But you give a little insight into the life in one called Outfield Cot,
Yes.
and some insight into what life was like, not just with baseball, but in the Negro Leagues.
And one of the things I like to point out before I read this one is always that the the perception the public has of what life is like for a baseball player is vastly different than what life actually is like for a baseball player. You see your teammates more than you see your family during the season. And hopefully you've got some great teammates. I had some phenomenal ones at the University of Kentucky. That's actually where I was when I wrote this poem. And when I came across in my research that Negro League teams would have to spend the night at the ball field when they were barnstorming, they were traveling across America, playing integrated teams sometimes, playing all-white teams sometimes, or playing other Negro League teams, particularly in the South, they would have to go sleep at the field because hotel owners would not allow them to stay the night. And I thought, while that sounds tragic, I've got a great group of guys that I spend a lot of time with. We would not view that as tragically as the general public might. Not excusing the behavior of those hotel owners, but I wanted to offer some insights into how I think Josh might have viewed this. So this is Outfield Cot. Sometimes when we're on the road and we need a place to stay and just hop on a bus full of everything we own and ride till we stumble across the nearest inn. When we real lucky, the moon look like a pearl before the first pitch and the stars light up just enough for innkeeps to see all the black on our faces that they don't want to rub off on their pillowcases, then pretend to read some sheet that says they at capacity for the night. Round that time, we all bob our heads as if we understand what he mean and walk real proud to the bus to ride the few blocks down the street to the park. Once we there, we each find us a spot somewhere in outfield grass, get real comfortable on our fresh-cut cot, and all my teammates count sheep. I don't waste my time with that foolishness. I like to lay back, like to count the stars, see if I can't pick out the one I'm about to hit next.
That was Outfield Cot, and we're talking about the book Pretend the Ball is Named Jim Crow, the story of Josh Gibson, poems by Dorian Hairston, the former UK baseball player who is with us today. We've read several selections you have from the book now. What would you like your readers to come away with once they have finished this book? And let me first say that in the introduction, you say, I implore you to consider why there was a need for the Negro Leagues in the first place. Certainly that would be one of the thoughts you'd want the reader to come away
Absolutely.
with. But tell me about what you would like for the reader to gain from this.
I want them to, my dream is that after this experience of reading this book, that you hopefully read multiple times, you find somebody, you give them a hug, and you go to a baseball game together. I want my reader to appreciate the moment in history that gave us these men and women of the Negro Leagues. And what I mean by that is the black community rallied behind and around Negro League baseball. And the experience going to a game, it was so important that they would move church service up so that it didn't interfere with the baseball game. That is huge, especially in the black community. And I want my reader to understand that baseball is a lot more than just a game. It is a way of life. It gives you an opportunity to spend time with loved ones. It is pastoral. It is leisurely. That's I believe Willie Mays, but that's what I want my reader to walk away with is that this is not just a baseball book. It's about so much more.
Well, we congratulate you for the success of this one, and let me ask you what's next now.
So right now I'm working on, without giving too much away, I'm back to my roots, spending a lot of time working on research with the owners, specifically the guys in Pittsburgh. So you've got Cumberland Posey and Gus Greenlee, and I've made my way over to Newark, New York, to do some research on. And by that I mean figuratively, not literally, although if somebody wants to finance a trip to Newark, New York for me, just let me know. Effa Manley, the co-owner with Abe Manley, her husband, of the Newark Eagles, who won the Negro League the Negro League World Series in 1946, and she negotiated Larry Doby and Monty Irvin's contracts for them when they hopped over to the major leagues.
Well, that's another challenge for you, but one that I'm
Yes.
sure you'll enjoy digging into too, because the owner's story maybe not so well known as of course some of these great players that we have as baseball fans at least heard of now and heard a little bit about them.
Which is, I'm hoping, a great starting point for some more research and some more conversations around how we did integration and how we can do it better.
And you have a website.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
So dghpoet.com, dghpoet.com. There you can order a copy of the book directly from me, and I sign it and ship it out to you anywhere in the States. I think I can also go international. We'll see. If not, I'll work with you. You can follow me on there for my events. I try to keep those up to date as well. And then I also have socials, Dorian_Hairston, I think on Instagram, Hairston44 on Twitter, and then my Facebook page is just my first and last name.
All right, again, the book is called Pretend the Ball is Named Jim Crow, the story of Josh Gibson, poems by Dorian Hairston, former UK Wildcat baseball player and now a successful and published poet. And congratulations on that, and thanks for doing this today.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for this wonderful conversation.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the WUKY Sports Page with your host, Keith Elkins, an exclusive podcast from 91.3 WUKY, produced at the WUKY studios by Alan Lytle. Our theme music is Peanut Butter and Jam by Illogical Bit, available at soundcloud.com/illogicalbit. Subscribe to the Sports Page through iTunes, Google Play, or at our website, WUKY.org.